changing it up a little bit today, and we're going to talk about asana. Please forgive the setting for this. It's getting cold outside, and today is very, very windy, so I don't even know if you'd be able to hear me. But I did want to share this post. I did want to share this little mini lesson, and I think that there's no better time than the present. So let's get right into it. Today I wanted to talk about the asana, the postures, and that is becoming much more synonymous with yoga than we'd like to admit. But a lot of the time, many people do think that if you say, I'm going to go do yoga, they think that you're going to go do some stretching or some exercise. So I want to talk about the different styles of practice, and if you are new to the practice, then you might kind of be able to find where your physicality would lead you, which practices would fit you more personally and anatomically. And if you're a teacher, you might be able to pick up on some of the clarifications of the terms between the different styles and names of the classes. So when we first start the postures, when we first approach the postures, we can notice that a lot of the times they require our muscles to be active. And that activation of the muscles creates a defiance against gravity. Even if it's just me lifting my arm out in front of me, gravity is pushing my arm down. I don't have to have a weight in my hand to just hold it out in front. Gravity's trying to push it down. Me holding up against gravity is a forceful action, okay? Okay, so you see, this is the little things. It's the little things. I just want to be able to get through this video, and something's going on in the background of the phone. Give me a moment. No, I'm not starting it over. No, I'm not. I won't start it again. Okay, so me having to defy gravity, that alone, that categorization of that posture would be then called a forceful posture. The term in Sanskrit for forceful is hatha. So this is just any posture, basically. A plank, a warrior, anytime that we are using our muscles to oppose gravity's force, which means we don't just collapse onto the ground, that is a hatha posture. Now, the practice of hatha yoga is linking together those postures, one to the next, in a very mindful way, in a very thoughtful way, and many times it should be leading us towards some kind of therapeutic practice so that the resting postures, the meditative postures, are both comfortable and sustainable. Okay, so the hatha yoga, the forceful practice, is really slow, but it also allows for us to build strength in the entry-level postures, if you will. That's going to make the more advanced and intermediate postures more accessible and less injurious. So we kind of want to start there. If you are new to the practice, look for hatha, look for slow vinyasas, because that leads me into the next thing. A slow vinyasa is a hatha practice. A sped-up hatha practice is a vinyasa. When it's woven together, when it's linked together, one posture to the next, in much more of a sequential and fluid manner. This means that there's not going to be so much time to describe or break down the posture. So having some kind of prerequisite knowledge is recommended if you're going to approach a vinyasa. This isn't really the case nowadays because of the way we've just watered down the terms, and a lot of people are trained even online to teach something like vinyasa, not knowing that that could be just too fast or too advanced for many people that are just entering into the practice. We see now that a lot of the people that can approach the vinyasas are the youthful, and we see the most traditional of all the vinyasas, Ashtanga. Unfortunately, we see a lot of people as they progress in age, they are turning away from Ashtanga for very real reasons. It's breaking their body. It's putting them through so much stress and tension that it isn't required to actually seek a meditative state. So the vinyasa has a place, and recently I've even had people tell me how much they've been loving the blissful feeling and their meditative attainments during the end of the vinyasa, during that shavasana, during the final resting posture. So the science, when it's involved, brings us great yogic practices, but if we just see the vinyasa as the movement, then we stay at the superficial level of the practice. We stay very, very surface level. And this brings me to my next point about vinyasa, is that even though the postures are linked and it is much more of a fluid practice, there are the moments where the postures are held. So let's talk about the most traditional of the vinyasas, or one of the most traditional of vinyasas, that Ashtanga Vinyasa. A lot of people see things like the sun salutations, and they think that that happens throughout the entire class. They think that they're linking motion with breath all the way until the final posture. It's madness. It's madness. We want to be able to get into a posture and enjoy it. Some of the postures take a breath or two just to set up, just to find the bind or attain the balance that might be necessary to actually sustain and enjoy the posture and use it for what it was really meant to be used. So if you're just linking motion with breath, you're just dancing, and there isn't an opportunity for that meditative focus to take hold, or any of the principles that go along with yoga. It's not yoga anymore. So in a vinyasa, we'll pause. And this brings me to the anatomical lesson during this little mini satsang, is that when we pause, the way that we're building muscle in those moments is through isometric tension, okay? The muscle's pushing and pulling, but the body's not moving. Strength is being gained. Strength to create very long and lean muscles, also to create very resilient connective tissues. So isometric tension is a beautiful way to gain strength and longevity in our posture, in our joints. Great stuff. But that's the way we build strength in a vinyasa, is through isometric tension, through getting into a posture and holding it. Okay, and it might not be for very long. It might be 3 breaths, 5, maybe 8 at the highest end, but we're not going to hold it that long, but we will be holding it. Okay, that is how a vinyasa will build your strength. So if you are looking to yoga to gain strength, remember that there's going to be that isometric tension that's shared between hatha and vinyasa and most of the traditional styles of practice. But nowadays we have power vinyasa. And recently I was asked, what is my power vinyasa like? And I know that I've been asked this throughout the years by many different students and teachers. What is a power vinyasa? What is the difference between a vinyasa, which is already a more advanced practice than a hatha, that makes it power? What's the powerful part of it? It really isn't necessary. If you've ever done an Ashtanga Vinyasa, if you've ever done any one of the tiers of Ashtanga, or even just the primary, the first primary series, then you'll know that is a powerful class. That is absolutely powerful. There's no heat needed. It's in a room temperature setting, and it is very, very powerful. It is very, very difficult, and I can tell you that from experience. I have to remember that, again, a lot of the students and a lot of the teachers nowadays, they've only studied online, and they got a certificate that made them into, that certified yoga teacher that could go and teach other people. So they haven't had that in-person teaching that would kind of show them what Ashtanga was. Let them know that there are traditional practices that we can look to and say, what is a vinyasa? How do we build muscle in the vinyasa? In that practice right there, how would they be building muscle? Because once we have that, then we can actually change it. We can change to power vinyasa, right? If we have a base understanding of what a vinyasa is, then we can say, well, what makes it a power vinyasa? And that means that we'd be building strength in different ways. We're going to be building power. We're going to be building muscle. We're going to be gaining the strength and musculature that could do a couple different things. It could advance us in our yoga practice into some arm balances or inversions or other strength-based postures. It could also add to your strength and range of motion off the mat in, say, a weightlifting scenario or some kind of other physical regimen that you might be involved in. So building muscle through another way, not just isometric tension, because it is not the most efficient way to build muscle. Anyone that knows the anatomy, anyone that studies the anatomy will be able to tell you that the isometric tension is efficient. It is very effective, but it's not the most efficient way to build muscle and proper musculature for a sustainable form late in life. So that's why power vinyasa does the other thing. What's the other thing? What's the other way to build muscle? Well, after isometric tension, there is repetition. There is repetition. And it's seen when we do squats. It's seen when we do bench press. It's seen when we do any kind of actual muscle building, weightlifting practices that are solely focused on the anatomy, right? If we have something like yoga where it's 99% not physical, and there's 1% that's physical, then if we can look at some 100% physical practices and see how are they efficiently building muscle, we would immediately recognize it. It's right there for us. It doesn't matter if you're swinging kettlebells, it doesn't matter if you're lifting dumbbells, it does not matter. You will be doing it in repetition. Okay, so that repetition, plug it in. Power vinyasa, the repetition of certain postures so that the musculature is able to be worked on and toned and built in those moments. Because otherwise, like I said, if it's just a longer hold and you're slowing down a vinyasa practice, it's not becoming a power vinyasa, it's actually going the other way. The slowing down of the practice would actually make it become a hatha practice. Maybe a power hatha, who knows? But it wouldn't be because you slowed it down and made them hold the postures. That's been going on in traditional vinyasas and traditional hathas for a very long time. Not as long as you might think, probably just around 100 years, but those postures had their utility. They had a true purpose. So if we're going to add our modernization, if we're going to make it power vinyasa, then study the anatomy and understand where the repetition would be most beneficial to build musculature, to build strength, to build power. All right, there's my rant. So we've got Hatha Yoga, more beginner based. Is it the most beginner based? Not always. You might maybe want to approach some kind of mindful flow or really slowed down hatha, or just something that says beginner in the practice. Use YouTube, use books, and find ways to study into the postures. Kind of seek some more anatomical knowledge, because if you are just kind of monkey see, monkey doing on the mat and just flowing along with the class, you might end up hurting yourself just because you might need specific cues that might be missed by the teacher because they might not be what the whole group needs. So studying our postures on an individual level and practicing them on an individual level will make them much more attainable during a sequence, but also the ability to go introspective, the ability to have that meditative comfort during those postures becomes, it just rises to the surface. So it's there for you, it's attainable, it's available for you. So you're not just stretching and sweating and getting dehydrated and feeling lightheaded and calling it bliss. No, we can use the meditative science in any one of the styles of class that I just mentioned, and we can enjoy what the teachers of old and what the practice really is meant to be bringing, which is just peace and bliss eternal, a feeling of unity, a feeling of freedom from sufferings, those kinds of things. So yeah, much more worthwhile. You know, I'm not saying that the physicality isn't important. It is. But if we are going to talk about yoga in the way of physicality, we got to know our stuff. We got to know what we're talking about, and we have to be able to look towards resources that do teach of the truths, whether they're ancient texts or more modern texts that speak of those ancient texts in modern terms. But we really have to be able to look towards the known. Okay, it doesn't matter. The books should be teaching the same thing. The author, as long as the message is the same, right? The yoga is being taught, then the picture of the person on the front of the book should not matter. So when we think about who's teaching these things, well, there's truths, right? And then there's opinion. So if someone's teaching you based on logic and reason and deriving from translated terms, that is very, very important. It's not just someone throwing something against the wall and hoping that it sticks, which unfortunately we've got a lot of today nowadays. So I'm going to wrap this up with this. I am going to be starting a podcast very soon, and I'm really, really looking forward to it because I'm feeling a little bit more free. I'm feeling a little bit more free to talk about the difference of what yoga should be teaching, and how it's become much more commercialized, how it's become more divisive than it wow, than it should ever be, more material and egoistic than it should ever be. And we can really start to talk about what the truths of the text were teaching us, and how we can start moving towards those things together, whether we're practitioners that just go a few times a week, or if we're teachers spending every single day on a mat. So I hope you enjoyed this little rant and ramble about some stuff, and I hope that you'll tune in when my podcast is released. That should be coming up soon. And yeah, any questions, leave them in the comments. Anything else you'd like to share, please send it over, and it'll be added into the list of topics that I hope to discuss through the podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really hope you're having a beautiful day, and get on your mat, get some practice, Hatha Vinyasa or Power Vinyasa. Do what feels right to you, do what feels comfortable to you, and remember to always be practicing with a powerful intention, a beautiful affirmation. You're worth it, you're whole, you're complete, and you are loved. Peace, peace, peace.